advantage Arsenal in this three-horse title race, as Liverpool and United played out a remarkable 2-2 draw at Old Trafford. As Ten Hag and Klopp pit their wits against each other, what were the tactics on display? Let's first assess Liverpool's tactics. Liverpool built up with a back two, and initially Endo and McAllister formed the double pivot. United early on were aggressive in the press, with Højlund looking to filter the ball to one side or the other, and this was backed up by both Fernandes and Mainoo pushing up, looking to make it a pivot-to-pivot press in the midfield, leaving Casemiro to cover behind them. However, Fernandes had a dual role, as not only was he expected to cover the pivot, but he had to lead the press, meaning his cover shadow on the deeper pivot had to be perfect, because if it was not, Liverpool would easily get past that initial wave of pressure and then have the overload in the midfield regions. But United were looking to be front foot even defensively, so Casemiro would back up Fernandes when he was pressing high, with the hope being if none of the deeper pivots were able to get onto the ball, this space wouldn't be exploited, and the gap between midfield and defense was so big for United, as the back four did not move up during the press due to the threat of the pace of Liverpool's own front three. What this meant is that at time, Liverpool were fairly easily able to get between the lines and then move up the pitch. In fact, the issue of Szoboszlai getting on the ball between the lines became so prevalent that Rashford had to be more and more passive as that first half wore on, looking to tuck in narrow on the midfielder to try and cover the space behind the high pressing pivots. As the game progressed, United had to be more passive at times, meaning Liverpool could afford to have Endo as the sole pivot, and McAllister would not just stagger slightly higher than Endo, he would push right up into zone 14. On occasion, we did see Bradley invert alongside Endo to be a secondary outlet, just in case he was under pressure. However, Bradley tended to occupy this region, trying to create more of a wide overload in order to more effectively support Salah. Salah looked to hug the touchline, and the threat of Salah, combined with the fact that he's left-footed looking to cut in, may be part of the reason that Ten Hag reverted to using Wan-Bissaka as a left-back, as the Egyptian would be cutting onto his strong side, and, usually, Wan-Bissaka is effective defensively. Wan-Bissaka being this aggressive on Salah did have the disadvantage of opening up room for the runner, be it Szoboszlai or Bradley, to move into the half space, dragging across Maguire and leaving them slightly underloaded in the box. Down the left-hand side, Liverpool's attacking methods were completely different. With Liverpool only building with a back two, Robertson did not have to stay deep. As a result, he could afford to be quite aggressive. What this meant is that when Diaz did stay wide, Robertson would still overlap down the outside, and Garnacho did look to track him at times. However, as a winger, he is not always defensively aware, meaning that Robertson could then get in on the outside and look to cross. This phenomenon could be made even worse, as Diaz actually spent a lot of time coming in central early on during the play, and dragging Dalo with him, meaning Garnacho was completely tasked with handling the left-hand side defensively, and Robertson, once again, would get into those crossing positions. And now it was not only Diaz that joined Núñez, Szoboszlai and McAllister would also be looking to overload the box, and Liverpool got into plenty of dangerous situations in this manner. But essentially only having Endo as the dedicated deep pivot left them extremely vulnerable on the transition, as if United were able to get past him initially, they would be running at the centre backs. And Højlund did a good job, as he had the pace to threaten in behind, meaning the centre backs could not close him down too early. But he was also happy to drop deep to receive the initial pass and then open up the play for his teammates. And particularly early in the match, United looked dangerous. Liverpool, chasing the game, saw plenty of changes in the second half, and Jones and McAllister became the deeper pivots, providing Liverpool with a lot more control. We also saw change out on the left-hand side, As with Elliott on the pitch, he was also happy to hug the touchline, allowing Salah to operate much more centrally, alongside Núñez and later Gakpo, meaning oftentimes Liverpool had a minimum of a front three looking to overload the back line. And once again, with crosses coming in from the outside, it led to many near game-winning situations. But what did United look to do when they were on the ball? When United were on the ball, Liverpool defended in somewhat of a 4-2-3-1, as they too looked to go man-to-man in the midfield. If the Reds had somewhat of a back three, whenever the ball went wide, it was up to a winger, either Salah or Diaz, to apply the pressure alongside Núñez. But in more settled open play, that role fell to Szoboszlai, who was expected to use his engine to get out to the defender and back in position when needed. At times early on, Casemiro was entrusted to be the sole pivot on the ball, and this was disastrous, as today in particular, his play both in possession and out of possession was poor in both halves. So Mainoo began to drop deeper alongside him to be the secondary option, but Liverpool, once again aggressive in their press, would simply allow McAllister to join that movement, allowing Endo to remain deep to cover the space between defence and midfield. United, however, spotted the opportunity in these zones. If Mainoo was the second pivot alongside Casemiro, we could see Dalot push up higher on the right-hand side and Garnacho move infield to create a 2 versus 1 against Endo. The more common situation, however, was for Dalot to invert and Mainoo to move with Fernandes, so now they had a 2 versus 1 against Endo. And from here, United would look to split their number 10s fairly wide, making it even more difficult for Liverpool's defensive midfielder to cover. How Liverpool dealt with this was by defending super narrow with both Diaz and Salah coming right infield, and what this would do is cover the passing lanes to Fernandes and Mainoo completely, making it extremely difficult to penetrate this first line for United. In addition, particularly on the occasions when Casemiro was isolated, when there was a turnover, he would be easily transitioned against, much like Enzo was for Liverpool. But the second goal for United was one of the few occasions where we saw Liverpool's midfielders go pivot to pivot and Endo being dragged out of position. And even then, it took an incredible pass from Casemiro to find Mainoo between the lines and acres of space because of the structure of that Liverpool midfield, and this eventually leads to the goal. This was also helped by Ten Hag's second half adjustment, where Fernandes would more often drop in alongside Casemiro as a more experienced head in the high pressure midfield, allowing Mainoo to have a little bit more freedom to push higher up. The question for you is simple: who will win the Premier League this season? Drop your reason in the comments below. For the manager tactical scores, despite the scoreline, Klopp was far superior tactically and was let down by the execution from his players as well as a sloppy error, meaning Klopp earns a 6.5 while Ten Hag earns a 4. But what are your ratings? Drop them down below. And check out these in-depth analysis of the top 2 teams in the Premier League this season. Click on screen now.